All right, let's dive into a word from the Bhagavad Gita that I think for a lot of us gets a really bad rap: austerity. We're going to completely unpack this idea, because what if its true meaning isn't about punishment at all, but about purification? I think you'll find it's a pretty game-changing way to look at it.
So just take a second and think about it. When I say the word austerity, what's the very first thing that pops into your head? Be honest. For most people, it's probably not something very positive.
Now, I'm guessing it's something along these lines, right? This idea of toughing it out, depriving yourself, maybe even some kind of painful, joyless existence. That's the common take on it, but we're about to flip that entire idea on its head by digging into its original and frankly much more powerful meaning. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to bust the modern myth of austerity. Then, we'll get to the heart of it with a Sanskrit concept called tapa. From there, we'll see how this actually translates into some practical acts of reverence and self-discipline before we finally get to the ultimate goal, transforming our everyday lives into something divine. Okay, so how do we get to the real meaning of austerity? Well, it all comes down to one single beautiful word from the Bhagavad Gita: tapa. And honestly, understanding this one word changes absolutely everything. So tapaf literally means to heat up. The best way to picture this is to think of a blacksmith working with raw metal. They put it in the fire, not to punish it, not to destroy it, but to apply this really intentional heat that burns away all the junk, all the impurities, leaving it stronger, purer, and way more brilliant. And you know, the source text uses this exact same analogy with gold. The fire doesn't hurt the gold, it actually reveals its true shining nature by burning off everything that isn't pure. And that right there is the real spirit of tapa. It's a process of strengthening and purification, not self-punishment. Okay, so if austerity is this purifying fire, that's a cool idea, but how do we actually use it? Well, the Bhagavad Gita gives us a super clear blueprint for what it calls austerity of the body, and it all starts with 5 very specific acts of reverence. So the verse lays out this incredible flowchart for our reverence. It starts at the very top with the highest source, the Supreme Lord. And from there, it kind of flows down through the human vessels of that wisdom, the pure-hearted Brahmins, our own spiritual teachers, wise people in general, and our elders. The whole idea is to consciously aim our physical energy, our actions, our posture, towards sources of guidance. It's really a practice in humility, in admitting there's wisdom out there bigger than our own, and that act itself is purifying. And this next point is absolutely crucial. The text is super clear about this. When it talks about Brahmins, it's not talking about a social class or who your parents were. Not at all. It specifically means anyone who embodies these sattvic qualities: purity, virtue, goodness, and wisdom. So it's about revering someone's character, not their status. All right, so reverence is the outward-facing side of physical austerity. The other side of the coin is internal. It's all about how we manage ourselves. The verse gives us 4 pillars of self-discipline that really form the foundation for all of this. And here they are. Think of these as creating a kind of clean, stable container for our spiritual energy. Cleanliness, both outside and inside, just cuts down on distractions. Simplicity, which, we might call minimalism or intentional living today, frees up so much mental space from being obsessed with stuff. Celibacy, or really just managing our sensual energy, is about channeling our vitality towards higher goals, not just suppressing it. And finally, nonviolence. In what we do, what we say, and even what we think, just make sure we aren't creating a bunch of negative energy for ourselves or anyone else. See, these aren't punishments. They're disciplines that lead to clarity and inner peace. So we've got these outward acts of reverence and these inward practices of discipline. But what's the point of it all? Why bother applying this purifying heat to ourselves? Well, this is where we get to the ultimate, transformative purpose of true austerity. And here it is. This is the big takeaway. True austerity is designed to uplift you, not to wear you down. It is a practice of taking our ordinary, day-to-day, mundane existence and, through this gentle, purifying heat, consciously elevating it, transforming it into something divine. It's all about unlocking our highest potential, not getting stuck on our limitations. So I want to leave you with this question to kind of chew on. If we throw out that old, harsh idea of punishment and instead embrace austerity as this beautiful process of purification, what could that look like in our lives today? What habits or thoughts could we gently place in that fire to let our own inner gold shine just a little bit brighter? Thanks for digging into that with us today.